The final NBC News poll before Election Day finds this race is neck and neck, with both candidates getting roughly 49% of registered voters. That's nationally.
Joining us now is Wake Forest political science professor John Dinan. John, it's so nice to have you here. Let's start with the state of this race in North Carolina. Can you recall another ever so close?
So North Carolina has been very close in recent years, but of course the closest of all was 2008. 4 million votes plus cast. Barack Obama wins the state by 14,000 votes. It took a while to call North Carolina. They eventually did. That's the closest state race. Closest national race, of course, would be going back to the 2000 election, where George W. Bush prevailed over Al Gore by basically 535 votes in the state of Florida, which tipped Florida's electoral votes and gave him the victory. So we have some close elections in North Carolina and nationally.
All within this century, although 2000 certainly seems like a long time ago. So a lot of focus on the final 10 days of the election, the closing message and how important that is. Donald Trump was here 4 separate days in the final 6 days leading up to today. Kamala Harris here twice during that time. What do you make of that? And how would you say both parties did as they try to meet these sort of late to the party voters who are still maybe not keeping up with the news cycle, but their vote counts just as much as everybody else here?
I always follow where do the candidates show up in the final days of the campaign, because that's where they think the race is competitive. It is very telling that Donald Trump made 4 visits to North Carolina in the final 3 days. That suggested that his campaign still sees the race as competitive. There might have been some talk earlier on that the race had moved on from North Carolina, not when both candidates are here. What you saw is you saw the candidates both go into their base. You saw the Harris campaign mostly go into major metropolitan areas, and then you saw Donald Trump's campaign showing up in Rocky Mount, admittedly Greensboro, but places somewhat off of the beaten path. And that's consistent with how they see their base voters. This was a turnout election at this point. Maybe some persuasion still going on, but a lot of it, let's go to our base supporters, make sure they get to the polls.
John, I want to ask you about the factor of unpredictability in this race. We have so many unaffiliated voters. When we talk about the minority vote, specifically the Hispanic population here, which has grown so rapidly, almost 11% of North Carolina's population is now Hispanic. But interestingly enough, and we were talking about this earlier, 38% only are foreign born. So that means that many are Americans. They are generations removed from their parents' ideology.
So many new voters coming into North Carolina, so many people in general moving to North Carolina, but that means a lot of new voters, and that means a lot of the campaigns having to try to meet these new voters and persuade them. The very important thing is Hispanic voters, an increasingly larger group of voters. It's not a monolithic group. Nobody's a monolithic group, but particular Hispanic voters, where in particular Central American, South American, Cuban origin, as you say, first generation, second generation, the campaigns are definitely addressing that and trying to meet these new voters. That's going to be one of the voter blocks to really watch in terms of how they break. And as you say, unaffiliated voters, we saw in early voting numbers, Republicans turning out, Democrats turning out. Turns out unaffiliated voters turn out the most of all. We have no idea. We have some sense, but we have no idea who they're voting for. All eyes on the unaffiliated voters, the biggest growing block of voters in North Carolina.
And quickly, John, before we wrap up here, we have teams in Mecklenburg, Wake, Guilford, Forsyth. What are some counties, maybe not even the obvious ones, that you're watching tonight and saying, okay, that's what turnout looks like. Okay, that's what the result looks like. What are some bellwether counties in your opinion? You know,
I'm always watching Charlotte-Mecklenburg, because Charlotte-Mecklenburg usually punches below its weight in terms of turnout. And that is a place where Democratic candidates always say, if we could boost Mecklenburg turnout to where it is in other big metropolitan counties, we could turn out a lot more Democratic voters. No surprise that Harris was there in Charlotte, Barack Obama was in Charlotte. So I'll be watching. Does the voter turnout boost in a place like Charlotte area? If so, that gives Democrats a leg up going into tonight.
And if not, probably see perhaps North Carolina go red for the 11th time in the last 12 years. Excellent, John. We appreciate it very much. Stick with us throughout the evening. John's going to be here throughout our late newscasts, offering analysis as the polls close and as results come in.